Good afternoon, everyone.
All right, we are live. All right, so we'll call to order this meeting of the Sustainable BC Committee. It is Monday, June 23rd, 2025, 1:31 p.m. I'll just call names around. If you could just say your name and your position or who you are in relation to the committee, and where you're zooming from, that would be great. I'm Andy Humboldt, community volunteer and current chair of the committee. Patty?
Patty Hilk-Meluish, City of Battle Creek Environmental, from Department of Public Works in Battle Creek.
Thank you. I'm zooming from my home in Battle Creek if I didn't say that. Kiona?
Kiona Ackley, community volunteer. I am Zooming from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you. Mark? You there, Mark? All right, how about Chris?
Yeah, good afternoon. Chris Martin, urban planner at Battle Creek Unlimited, zooming in from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you. Bob?
Bob Gilbert, community volunteer, zooming in from my office in Battle Creek.
All right, Bessie?
Bessie Plume. Patty's got her speakers on. Zooming in from DPW here in Battle Creek, with the city. Thanks.
All righty. And Danielle?
Hi guys, I'm your guest speaker for today, Danielle Dickow, lead packaging engineer from Kellanova, zooming from the Kellanova R&D building in Battle Creek.
Great. Well, welcome, Danielle. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, Mark Stevens, are you there? Mark is a committee member showing on the screen.
Hi, Mark Stevens here from community volunteer from Battle Creek. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you, Mark. All right. Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We do have 7 of us, which is a quorum. So we will approve the minutes from April. Those were sent out previously. So hopefully you've had a chance to look those over. Can I have someone move to approve the minutes of the April meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Kiona second.
One of you two is going to have to go headphones, or this is not going to work. All right, moved by Bessie, seconded by Kiona to approve the April minutes, the minutes from the April meeting. Is there any questions or suggestions or comment about those April minutes? All right, then, seeing none, all those in approval of accepting those minutes, please say aye or just wave for make some
Aye.
sort of affirmational sign. All right, are there any opposed? All right, seeing or hearing none, we will call those minutes unanimously approved. Then before we turn this over to Danielle, let's check. We've had a couple other members join us. So Dee, you want to just give your name and your position and where you're zooming from?
I am Dee Chauvin, zooming in from my home office in Battle Creek, and I'm a community member.
Thank you. And Chris?
Yep, sorry it's late. Community member, I'm coming to you from Marshall.
Great. Thank you. All right, Patty, are we just turning it over to Danielle, or do you need to introduce what we're doing, or what?
Yeah.
It's just interview.
So,
Oh, no.
Danielle agreed to speak to us. She's with Kalanova.
But now you're on mute, Patty.
Yeah, we lost her.
Okay. Now, can you hear me? Sorry about
Yep,
that.
there we go.
We've worked with Danielle a lot with their Kalanova team, Go Green team. They've done, they've planted trees with us and just recently planted some native plants for us and given us funding. So she's been very involved with the city for many years. And I thought it would be good for our group to hear what they're doing at Kalanova sustainability wise. So Danielle agreed to talk to us about some packaging initiatives that they're doing. So I guess I'll just turn it over to you, Danielle. Thank you.
All right, and I just put the screen up. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Danielle Dickow. I'm a lead packaging engineer at Kalanova. Yeah, Patty and I have mostly crossed paths on the Go Green team, and I am going to be talking about some different non-Go Green things related. I guess my day job is packaging sustainability for North America for Kalanova. So I'm responsible for creating our technical roadmap, finding ways to make packaging more recyclable, include recycled content, and then also reporting through various channels, whether that's internal corporate sustainability reporting or anything that's regulatory, etc. So I just want to make a screen adjustment real quick here because I was trying to be able to see you guys and my presentation at the same time. Are you seeing full screen presentation or do you see my entire screen?
I see your whole screen.
Okay, so
Plus,
I
I
just
mean,
won't be able.
I'm also seeing thumbnails of you all up at the top, but
Gotcha. Okay, so I'll leave this full screen and I won't be able to see you guys. So just like flag me if there's questions or anything. Feel free to just interrupt and we'll go from
okay.
there.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so just to get grounded, maybe I'm sure you guys are all aware from the city, and I'm not sure who else is on the YouTube live, but just to provide a little bit of clarification on Kalanova. So there was a split from Kellogg Company probably almost 2 years ago now. So Kalanova is the snacking and frozen foods portion that split off from North American Cereal. So this is just kind of mostly the brands you'd recognize for US brands. So we're talking Cheez-It, Pringles, Crackers, Eggo, Morningstar, etc. As far as sustainability goes, I'm going to focus on packaging today, but I did want to touch on just what our overall commitments are. We call this the Better Days promise, and a portion of that promise is about sustainability. So we have hunger, well-being, ED&I, and then also sustainability. Within that sustainability bucket is a number of initiatives. I only focus on packaging, so that's what I'm
Danielle.
gonna. Yep.
I'm seeing if you have gone through your slides, I'm not seeing new slides. I'm just seeing the first slide. I'm not sure if you've.
Oh, I am advancing. Oh, let's see.
Maybe we're seeing your actual PowerPoint. Maybe you're.
Oh, is that better?
Yep. Now we're on the Better Days promise slide.
You were getting like all the notes view and everything, so that's okay. Sorry about that. I don't usually use Zoom, so the functionality is a little bit different for me.
You're good. Yeah, but yeah, now I see the third slide. You're good.
Okay, yeah, thanks for stopping me there. I'll just go back to the brand slide real quick just so you guys can see what I had up there. So these were the logos of almost all of our US brands. And I'll go back to the commitment. So our Better Days promise has those kind of four pillars or four circles you see there on the right within sustainability. Some of these goals are related to our manufacturing plants, and then others are related to responsible sourcing of ingredients as far as farming practices go and things like that, food waste. So we do have goals around greenhouse gas emissions, renewable electricity, water usage, food waste, responsible supply chain. And then what I'm going to talk about further today is the packaging piece of that. And we do have a commitment to work towards 100% recyclable, reusable, or compostable packaging. And that's what I'm going to get into a little bit more detail. So under that packaging commitment umbrella, we have a couple of add-ons, if you will. So we've got the 100% commitment, which is for reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And then with that, we're also a signatory of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation New Plastics Economy. And we have some self-set goals for plastic packaging specifically. So eliminating unnecessary plastic packaging, sourcing 10% of our plastic packaging from post-consumer recycled content, aka PCR, and then also a 5% virgin plastic reduction. And then based on all of those goals, we do report annually and publicly on the status of those commitments. Within North America, and really within all of the other global regions too, we are focused on recyclable packaging out of that reuse and compostable piece. And I'll get into some of the pros and cons here, or the why we're going after recyclable. So recyclable is the most accessible option for consumers. However, when recycling was kind of, the infrastructure was developed, it was developed in mind for paper, right? We had a lot of newspaper, we had a lot of magazines, we had a lot of office paper, and basic types of rigid packaging like milk jugs, glass bottles. Packaging has evolved a lot over the years, and so there's a lot of formats that are not really accepted in today's infrastructure for recycling. So our goal is to design for the existing infrastructure and then also design with the future infrastructure in mind. And particularly that's around flexible packaging, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, we have 7 states that have passed laws related to packaging. A couple of those 7 have mandated recyclable packaging, meaning if they put materials or certain types of components on a list for their state specifically. Otherwise, we risk being banned for sale in those states. Right now, it's California and Minnesota, and the deadline kind of is 2032. So we're working to find solutions on how do I get our products on the list of accepted materials that will be considered recyclable in those states. And then the other piece is, so when I talk about flexible packaging, I'm talking about snack pouches, wrappers, bags, film type stuff, wrappers. Those are kind of what we call first, at least to make them recyclable, those are what we would call first generation flexible materials. So the packaging that you have in market today, that has evolved over time. It's existed for a long time. It's been optimized, and now we're trying to change it to something else. And that's kind of like the first go round as to, okay, we're going to try to make this a certain material. And that material has not had a chance to be optimized like the ones that we've been using for the last 20 to 30 years. Also, recyclable, it does come at a higher cost versus our non-recyclable packaging, but that kind of puts me into the next bucket of compostable. Compostable does even come at a higher cost than recyclable packaging. And consumers generally do not have access to compost collections. If they do have access to composting, it's typically for straight up organic food waste or yard waste. And a lot of those collection sites either don't accept compostable packaging or they don't want to accept it. However, there are certain forms of packaging where compostable could make sense if it's something that's heavily soiled with food. things like sauce packets or meat packaging and things like that, where it does not make sense to put it in something recyclable. But the infrastructure challenge is kind of a lack of access to get these things collected once they leave the store or once the consumer takes them home. So compostable, we see working well in a closed loop system, more like a stadium or a cafeteria where you almost like restaurant style, right? It's something, you know, we have compostable stuff here in our cafeteria, and you know, you're eating it on site and you're disposing it on site, and it just makes sense. Compostable does also offer some challenges with machinability when you're running things on high-speed equipment. And then it does not have as good of moisture and grease barrier. So if you've got things that have oils and nuts, fruit fillings, things like that, they just don't perform as well from a shelf life perspective. And then the final bucket, reuse. This one's a bit more complex from a supply chain standpoint, and also just an industry-wide issue, right? We've got lots of different manufacturers of a whole assortment of products. Reuse would be the ideal way to reduce waste, but how do all of these companies standardize containers, where to return them, how to return them? Do you take them back to the store? Do you mail them back? What's the carbon footprint of that process look like? Do you charge deposits for them? Where do you take them to get cleaned, sanitized, relabeled? So there's a lot of logistics involved with that, and just very, very complex. So any questions there? Okay. So I just want to get everyone grounded on kind of definitions as I go through some of this stuff. So when I say recyclable, we kind of use that term interchangeably, but there's like a middle ground with recycle ready. And basically the difference is whether it's recyclable based on population access and the recycling rate for that material. So the criteria for recyclable is greater than 60% population access, and the material has to be recycled or recovered at a great rate greater than 30%. So there are things that qualify as recycle ready, and those would be things that, you know, you might see them on one city's guidelines versus another, or maybe different county by state, whatever it might be. And that's where the access varies, and only a portion of the population, a smaller portion, has access, and the rate falls below 30%. So this is where we would consider something where we would call it check locally, meaning it's recyclable, but not everywhere. And then also store drop-off is the plastic bag collection for polyethylene films. So a lot of people have access to that, but the rate at which that's recycled is quite low. And then the non-recyclable means less than 20% has access. So there's basically not enough infrastructure to collect or sort a particular material. One thing I did want to point out is Kellanova is a member of How to Recycle. I hope that these labels are familiar to everybody, but I think they go unnoticed. But there are, you know, almost every major consumer products company is using these labels, and it's really the best attempt to have a standardized label that shows proper disposal instructions and whether something's recyclable or not. This is a voluntary program. We still do label the items that are not recyclable. We think it's important to provide the transparency to the consumer, and it also prevents things that are non-recyclable from entering the recyclable stream and causing contamination. So these are just a few examples of our products. You can just see how we use the different terminology, right? Paper box, multi-layer wrapper, paper box, plastic bag, and then even on the right side, if you've got a variety pack, then you've got a handful of tiles that indicate each component and whether or not it's recyclable or not. And maybe you'll start noticing these labels on products when you're grocery shopping, because they're on a lot of stuff. Okay, so store drop off. I kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you've seen those bins at the kind of the front doors of the store or near a service desk, what has traditionally been for plastic grocery bags is actually for much more than that. We're trying to design our flexible packaging to fit within the acceptance criteria for this stream, which is basically polyethylene films that's high density and low density, resin coats 2 and 4. But it's not necessarily straight up polyethylene when you're talking about food packaging. So we might have to have certain percentages of barrier layers, things to give us the properties that we want to protect the food and have the best machinability possible. But if we can get our films to be designed for acceptance in this stream, then they would get the store drop-off logo from How to Recycle, and that qualifies our packaging to be in this collection. Most consumers do have access to this. Pretty much every major grocery chain, and then even some other retailers like Kohl's, I think Dick's Sports. So keep your eye out for collection bins, and you can start creating your bag of bags and build up your collection and take it back to a drop-off location. I will say participation is quite low for things that are not straight up grocery bags, but I think it'll come with time. Labeling will help. Consumer behavior just needs to change a little bit. And you may have seen some articles about mistrust in this collection as well. Unfortunately, we've seen some cases where people put air tags and you don't want to see if they're actually getting recycled, and some of these collections did end up in the landfill, so there is some mistrust around it. But the number one user of this collection currently is Trex, and they're making their composite lumber from this collection of store drop-off material. So I kind of talked about this a little bit, but flexible packaging has been optimized. Things that consumers don't normally think about when you're eating a Rice Krispie treat bar, right? You're not thinking about how many bars per minute were wrapped. You're not thinking about the heat resistance of the seal that closes the wrapper. Puncture resistance, even something like sprinkles, which are kind of, you know, create a rough and bumpy surface. Like you don't want little pinholes in your wrapper. And then just your overall shelf life and freshness. So all of that is taken into account when choosing a material. And that's the reason really that we have multi-material structures today. So that Rice Krispie treat wrapper is a combination of 2 different types of plastic layered together. And it gets us these optimized performance attributes that work well for manufacturing and work well for quality for our consumers. When you think about recycle-ready films and trying to change from a multi-material to a mono-material to try to get it to that recycle-ready state, we might have to make that material thicker to make up for some of the lack of barrier for freshness. That thickness increase could also impact the machinability, but also there are other performance attributes like heat and puncture. So polyethylene for recycle ready has it melts at a lower temperature than other plastics. And so when you're sealing those pouches, you can actually start to melt the film in the machine, things like that. So we're looking at the process holistically. We want to make sure that it's not going to negatively affect our production operations. And then also we want to make sure that whatever the consumer takes home, it's not going to be hard to open, or it's not going to be unsealed. It's not going to be melted, right? So we have to do a lot of testing on on these different films to try to get them to a state where we can feel confident that we're providing not only a recycle ready solution, but something that meets the consumer expectations for when you buy that product. So just a little example here. We have not put the sustainable wrapper for Pop-Tarts in market yet, but this is just kind of one of the scenarios that we're looking at. So if the current Pop-Tarts wrapper is a polypropylene and we want to switch it to a polyethylene to be recycle ready, right now we're looking at a much thicker material, so it's 86% thicker. And then based on that, those wrappers come on a roll, and that thickness will result in less impressions, so less number of wrappers per roll. And then you might have less rolls per truck, so now you're using more transportation to get that film to the plant. You're also doing more frequent changeovers on the machine because those rolls will run out faster. And then the compromised machinability, which I just talked about as far as heat resistance, wrapping speeds, and then the barrier properties can also be different. So we don't want to reduce our shelf life and create any food waste. Excuse me. And then these new materials have not had a chance to be really optimized for production, and they do come at a higher cost right now. So when you think about what is more sustainable, the current wrapper, it's not recyclable yet, but it is very thin, it's very optimized, it's efficient to transport, it's efficient for production, and it's also much lower cost. Any questions so far?
So Danielle, how much of is your job totally looking at these kind of things, or do you guys get to a point where you're like, I guess we're gonna go with this for the time being, and like is it a continual process that you're going through to try and optimize the packaging?
So my job is kind of finding the options that are out there that could be potential solutions. It's in kind of what we would call a technical readiness phase. So scope out a supplier. Do they have something that might work for our application? Does it seem like it's even a feasible option for us to use, right? You might look at these things and be like, this does not seem like the greatest path forward if there's all of these challenges, but we really have to identify what those challenges are, go back to the supplier, and we can start kind of a development partnership and say, well, this does not necessarily meet our needs. Like, what can you guys do on your end? Is there other ways to reformulate the film that can give us better properties? But even so, we just take it as a starting point and we'll put it either on a line in our pilot plant, or we'll do a short plant trial, a plant test. We're looking just for exactly these things. We're looking for how does it work on the machine? What kind of issues are we seeing? We will start shelf life studies. So, we might do this quick plant test, wrap a few hundred products and put them into a study, and then we review them every month to see how they're performing over time as far as freshness goes. So we get it to a point of technical readiness, and then we can share that with our commercial teams, our brand teams, and say, hey, we've got these packaging sustainability commitments. Here's a potential solution. Here's some of the pros and cons. Here's how much it would cost. And then we really need the alignment from our business team to say, yes, we want to put this into market, or no, let's wait to see like if we can develop something further and improve this before we go forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of digging in a little bit more to that process that you just said, where you bring it to the business analysts and the business analysts kind of make the decision about if it's something that they want to invest in or not. I'm kind of looking at these attributes and wondering if they are tiered, if there's ever a scenario where the investment into a higher material cost and producing less may be less important than that commitment to sustainability, that kind of thing. Like if they had to tier them, just based on your experience, are they prioritized at all?
So I would say honestly, cost is our biggest hurdle right now, but I will say the regulatory environment in those states that have passed packaging laws are going to be the thing that kicks these projects into action. Because if we are, the material, let's say, is more expensive for some of these solutions, but if we are banned for sale in the state because we don't have a certain packaging type, the risk of that is much greater than the material cost to do this. So it just becomes a business decision of when or when to start, how much of the volume, right? We can't just flip a switch and be like, oh, we're ready to do this, right? It's kind of got to happen in phases. So we have to continue the plant testing, continue the technical readiness, and then kind of chip away at that 2032 date that is for compliance.
Awesome. Thank you for that response.
Mm-hmm. I'll keep going. I have maybe 4 more slides. So we'll talk about recycled content a little bit. And I am talking a lot about flexible packaging in general because that's the portion of our portfolio that is not recyclable. It's very easy to add or easy to use recycled content in paper and plastic. It's a little bit more challenging. So if you take our current non-recyclable materials today, it could be any combination of 3 resins, 2 or 3, depending on what product type. But that material would still be not recyclable. We do want to get it to that recycle ready state and then consider adding recycled content to it. But we do have options that we've looked at as far as putting recycled content into non-recyclable packaging as well. And when you're talking about polyethylene films, so something like our crackers and our Cheez-Its that are in a bag in box format, so they've got that unprinted bag into a box, those are polyethylene. The source for recycled content for those bags would be recycled milk jugs. That's currently the only FDA approved source for recycled content. So that's something else to consider as far as food safety goes. If we were making trash bags, it would be a little bit different. You don't need FDA approved resin to do that. But with that, even with a clean stream of milk jugs, you can still end up with minor defects. And a defect, I guess, from an R&D standpoint, it really wouldn't probably impact the consumer perception, but they do have like little dots or a little grayish tint and things like that that are different from what we're using today. And we're also looking at adding recycled content into shrink bundle wrap that's used for shipping. So we've got some things scoped out that we're working on there. We don't use a lot of rigid plastic in our snack portfolio, but you can see those Pringles snack stack cups. Those are made of polypropylene. There's currently either a no or very limited FDA approved source for polypropylene. And that's kind of where you can get into like sourcing from advanced recycling, which is a completely different process. relatively new. Basically turns plastic into its original oil state instead of chopping it and cleaning it and then remelting it. So there are other options as far as how the availability of recyclable resin is evolving with new technology, but that's still pretty new. And then in paperboard, a lot of our products do use 100% recycled paperboard. And then there is a difference between post-consumer recycled. So you might only see 25 to 35% post-consumer content, even though the board itself is 100% recycled, meaning it comes from internal processes from the supplier when they're, feeding scrap back into their operations. And then I wanted to give a couple of examples of what to look for as far as things we've been able to do, getting things to a recycle ready status. So Pop-Tart bites, and we also had Nutri-Grain bites. Those are in a store drop-off qualified pouch. This is kind of a unique format that I think was sold in convenience stores and maybe airports and things like that. And then we also had this outer bag for a variety pack. So the food contact portion, which would be the Cheez-It Snapped pouches inside, are still not recyclable, but then we were able to qualify a store drop-off bag for the variety pack outer packaging. And then Eggo pancakes were qualified for store drop-off as well. Still some work to be done on the waffle portion. Then I did want to highlight a material reduction example. So in this project, we had these 3 products: Club Crisp, Cheez-It Snapped, and Cheez-It Puffed. They were all in bag sizes that were different yet very similar dimensionally. And we were able to harmonize all 3 products in the same bag, down gauge the film, which means make it thinner. And then because we harmonized the bag size, we also looked at harmonizing the shipping case. We were able to reduce the height of that case just enough to get an extra layer on the pallet, which improves the efficiency for shipping. And then with that change between changing the bag and the case, we were able to eliminate 672,000 pounds of packaging. That would be like an annual amount based on the quantity that we've produced. And then that unit load pallet improvement also eliminates almost 400 trucks removed from the road. So these are things that we're looking at constantly. Making things thinner is, kind of an easy thing to do, but there's only so much that you can do. Once you get beyond a certain point, then you start risking that machinability again. You start just risking the overall quality, and we don't want any damage. And that goes for shipping cases and everything too, right? We don't want to be making boxes thinner and weaker if the crackers are going to get crushed and arrive broken at the store and the consumers are going to complain. So when we do these things, we do them with thought and with consumer quality in mind to make sure that it's not changing the consumer experience. And then here's one more example. Normally when you have a shipping box, you fold the flaps and they meet in the middle, and you put a piece of tape down the middle. With a flap gap design, you can eliminate a lot of corrugated packaging material weight. It wouldn't seem so significant when you think about it, but at the volumes that we ship some of our products, we did this with Eggo a few years ago and saved over 5 million pounds of corrugated material just by adding a gap in so those flaps don't meet in the middle, and we use glue instead of tape. Does not affect recyclability at all. But that was a massive corrugated reduction, which is awesome. That's a lot of corrugated. So I think that was my last one. Yep. And we do have time left, so I'll take any questions, and actually I'll stop sharing so I can see you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. Questions from the group?
That was great. That's really cool to see what, so how many people are working on, your what you're doing at Kellanova?
So you're pretty much looking at her, however. So it's me for North America, and then we have one other person that supports packaging sustainability. She's also based in Battle Creek, but she's in more of a global strategy role. So we work closely together. And then as far as like the reduction projects go, we have packaging engineers that support each category of food. So like Eggo being a category, rice, or really kind of a brand, I guess. So each brand packaging engineer can support projects under that brand. And so they're doing more of the reduction projects and launching new products, where I'm trying to do the behind the scenes technical readiness and doing that preliminary work with suppliers. And then I can loop those other engineers in when I get to a point on like, hey, can you help me talk to your business partners about, potentially putting this on on the calendar for a new product launch, or, let's get people's feedback and buy-in. So it's not completely solo, but no one else has packaging sustainability like titled in their role like I do. Yeah, I'm trying to bring everybody along on the journey with me. Yeah, but it's challenging.
And do you have a counterpart or counterparts in the Kellogg company, or are those companies so separate now that that's not even really a thing?
That is correct. We are completely separate, so I can't speak to
Okay.
how they're handling theirs. I mean, I know that when we did split, I had a number of conversations with people that I knew would be going to WK Kellogg's. I don't think they have the same packaging sustainability commitments that Kellanova has retained, but that does not mean that they're not actively doing some other work. Like they will still be affected by all of the regulatory things and stuff that I've mentioned as well. So even though they might not have them as corporate commitments, they're still going to be affected by state laws.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. I had a question, since you do have a worldwide push, how does that influence, like I know the EU probably has some maybe stricter guidelines than the US, or how does that vary as well with your so like just for instance, I know this is like if those changes do happen in those few states that you mentioned, does that mean that that could expand beyond that reach? That was my kind of question. Like if you find a way to make the numbers work, do you see that affecting other communities that don't have those mandates in place, and that be more universal versus running, multiple different lines and multiple different plants? Or do you see it
Yeah.
strictly being adopted in those areas based on those regulatory markets?
No, I'd say we are not going to be making packaging decisions or packaging formats to be sold in specific regions. Anything that we make to be sold in North America, whether it falls under a California or Minnesota or whoever's guideline, we're not going to be designing state-specific packaging.
Okay.
So it will affect our entire portfolio on what changes that we need to make. And as far as other regions go, other global regions, I mean, yes, recyclability can vary. The infrastructure can be different. They have their own set of regulations, which I'm not super close to as well, but they have, I think it's pretty similar landscape. In fact, they've had packaging regulations much longer than the ones that are popping up in the US. So, from what I've heard from our global counterparts, like their retailers, they're really cracking down too. They know that we've had some scenarios in European countries where we've already risked being banned for sale until we make changes to packaging. So it's being accelerated. The work is being accelerated a little more there, and it just needs to hit here. And I think that is, in the next 5 years, that'll really kick us into gear to start meeting those, being compliant with those laws.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. That's a big undertaking.
It's the
It's important,
regulatory
though.
stuff is honestly a huge part of my job right now, and reporting. So like we have to report into these. Right now it's 3 states with active reporting, and there will be 4 more in the next couple of years. But we have to break down our material usage into state categories that they have designated. So, what we might call a specification in our system for an a Rice Krispie treat wrapper might be called something else in California versus something else in Colorado and something else in Oregon. And like I'm mapping those materials to whatever the states are. And then we do have to submit how much by weight we are using based on how much we sell into that state. So it's been a lot of specification digging and number crunching the last few months to prepare for that. But it's been a learning journey for sure. Yeah.
I took a sustainable packaging class at MSU years back. So
okay.
It's kind of a flashback to your model.
Yeah. Well, I went to Michigan State, so yeah.
It's a #1 school for packaging, I hear. So
Indeed. Yes. Yes. And hopefully after you heard me speak today, you even have like a bit more thought behind when you next time you eat a snack food, you'd be like, oh, I didn't realize like all of the stuff that goes into the design of that, right? Like nobody's thinking about when you open a snack bar about the material selection for shelf life and how many bars per minute it runs on a machine and all of that. So yeah, it's kind of a behind the scenes thing that nobody thinks about until there's a problem with it.
Hey, Danielle.
Can't get this open.
This is Bob Gilbert. I am one of your customers, though, that does think about those things. I spent I spent 24 years at one of your competitors, Ralston Foods, and I worked on sustainability projects. So everything you've talked about today rings a lot of bells with me. We had all the same problems and all the same challenges. So yes, I am one that does think about that stuff. I did have a question though. Does customer demand have any bearing on your choices for sustainability? Back when I, many years ago, we did notice through our marketing department would feed us information and tell us that there were certain certifications that we could earn to put on our packaging regarding sustainability that had a customer demand associated with them. And I just wondered if you have encountered something similar.
So I guess my experience with that is consumers say they want sustainable packaging, but it's not a purchase decision for them. And it's not something that they're willing to pay more for. Most consumers anyway. I think there will be a niche of people who are super environmentally conscious, right? And maybe they're recycling, they're composting, like whatever it might be, right? But for most consumers, I think they want it, but they don't necessarily also understand it, or they might not even have the access to dispose of it properly. That's another huge gap, is like the recycling infrastructure in our country is just not that great, to be honest. What else was I going to say? There was something else that you had said that I was going to mention. I can't remember, but
I had mentioned
ultimately,
marketing
what's that?
Well, maybe it had to do, I mentioned our marketing department would feed us that information. I don't know if that
Oh,
is what. you were thinking.
so yeah, we do have a an insights and analytics group that we can, oh, you know what, it was about labeling and certifications. That's what it was about. So it depends on what that certification is, right? Because for a while we had Sustainable Forestry Initiative, SFI logos on some of our packaging. And we did survey some consumers on that, and they don't know what that is or what it means. They're more likely to recognize something that says made from recycled paper. Also, just claims in general. I think there's the how to recycle label is the best thing that we have right now as far as like a claim that is validated. And that's not even necessarily a claim, but it is an on-pack logo that people can look for. But as far as other certifications, I think it goes over consumers' heads most of the time, unless they are one of those environmentally conscious people who would recognize that organization.
Yeah, what you said earlier was they want it, but they don't want to pay for it. I think that's the.
Yeah.
But great presentation. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Anything else, guys? I don't know if you have other agenda topics or if I took too much time, but
No, you're good. We just have some odds and ends to reporting and whatnot. I think we'll be fine. But yeah, thank you very much.
okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Danielle. That was great.
All right. Thanks, Patty. Thanks for inviting me. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
Patty's
thank
got
you.
my contact info. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Thanks very
Will
much.
do. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. I'll
Thank
go ahead and drop off then. I
Okay.
appreciate
Okay,
it.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Patty, I'll leave it up to you. Whatever highlights you feel necessary to hit I know a lot of this on the agenda is just sort of reporting what
Yeah.
happened and whatnot, but if there are things you need to pull out and mention.
Well, I
Uh,
think the main thing I finally got those just it was very busy what I sent you guys, but I just pulled out our goals from the sustainability plan and highlighted in yellow what I think we've kind of started or have done, and in green the things that look like maybe some easier next steps for us. So maybe if we can, I mean, we even communicate maybe a little bit in the next couple months via email, maybe to kind of get something going there and give me your comments back. And just after looking at the plan, it just feels like we're ready to do an update, and we are due to do an update. So
yeah.
so
Yeah,
that
I thought that made sense. I mean, you're saying it's busy, but but yeah, that was the color coding and
okay.
that was helpful and made it clear. And yeah, and if people have comments or questions based on that, to get back to you via email, that would be great.
Okay, that sounds good. And then we do have a tentative date with City Commission October 21st at 5. Just that we can use that for both the greenhouse gas, which seems so long ago now, but talking about that. And then we're just supposed to meet with Commission basically on an annual basis. So it's overdue. So
Yeah.
put the 21st on your calendar for now. And yeah, I think that's I think those are the highlights. And oh, also did want to ask, do you want to start having more speakers like Danielle I know we need a little time sometimes to talk about more in detail of what the group's doing, but would you like us to start trying to find other businesses or other sustainability initiatives, or maybe every other time or something like that? What's your thought on that?
I find it helpful, and I think it is good from a community standpoint to have this, someone like that on record with the committee. I mean, because that's Kellanova is a pretty big deal in our community. And obviously we're worldwide, and our community happens to be the one where they live, and would be the vehicle for them to make a public record of what they're doing. So, yeah. I would. Other folks can speak up too, but
Yeah, I found a lot of value in that in that presentation. And yeah, Patty, as long as it's not too much more workload for you, I think it's good.
Danielle did all the work, so. Yeah.
And I was even going to offer, maybe, I know that because I was like looking back in our minutes, I was like, oh man, it's almost been a few months back. Regarding your goals, I was out last week, but I was reading through them. I don't know if it deserves a special meeting like we did for building up your presentation. I'd love to
It might, yeah.
focus in on that, because October is going to be here. When's our next meeting scheduled? It would be good to have these.
Yeah, August 25th. But yeah, if we want to do a special meeting and just kind of maybe.
That was just an idea. I know
Yeah, I
there's
like
only a few
that.
people left on the meeting, but just to give it that time to work things through, to prepare you, and then how, yeah, is that going to be an ask? Do you think you're gonna do on October, Patty, is to talk about the need to update the plan from 2018?
I think just kind of touching base with the commission in general, just to let them know we're out there, what we're doing, what our goals are. And yeah, so maybe a meeting even be like, maybe, because we will meet in August, but maybe a meeting devoted to the goals that we sent out, and just kind of give, see where the group wants to go and how we can get everybody a little more involved if they want to be, to, take on some of these things or help with data collection or whatever we want to do. But yeah, what do you think, Bessie? And yep. So if you guys are up for it, maybe we can have one July, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, or just fully devote the August meeting to that, and then
That's true.
maybe give the group some homework, like myself, to keep me on track. Like, hey, could you have comments in by July? And then that gives you guys time to review. I know Robert's always pretty good about putting things putting things together when we worked on a presentation, but I know we did have a special meeting for that, and I did find value in that. And then just analyzing people's remarks too.
Yeah. So maybe homework for July, and then just devote the meeting. I like that, in August, to talking about the goals and where we want to go. And that makes sense, Chris.
And then if we need to have a special meeting after that, possibly in September, perhaps, and then that'll get us ready for the presentation, just brainstorming.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good. One more thing. We used to have a bicycle committee, and it seems to have disappeared. And I'll put that out for the July comments too, but there were a lot of goals related to bicycles, bicycle transportation in Battle Creek. And apparently the group hasn't met in like 5 years. So, so I think we need to talk about that maybe and see where we want to go with that.
There was a committee like this one that was specifically for like non-motorized, or just bicycles?
Yeah, bicycles. I don't know if it was called the bicycle.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway.
Yeah, there was a bicycle advisory committee, but really it was non-motorized. The city has a non-motorized transportation plan, and so that was the connection. Yeah, I'm surprised they don't still meet.
Yeah, a lot of the staff that was on that has since left the city, and so yeah, we can kind of think about that, and if we want to get that going, or if it's our place to get that going, I'm not sure. So
yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, I know I've met with the owner of the bicycle shop downtown. I think they still do weekly organized rides. And then there was some effort around the Earth Week to do some organized rides as well. So, okay.
Yeah, and Mike was a member of that. When I was on the commission, I was on there too. And Mike was a member. Made sense, obviously.
okay.
No, but that'd be huge, because for instance, I'm working on an initiative to connect a quarter-mile section of the linear trail to the VA out in the industrial park. And I made some connections with the North Country Trail chapter, but having a group that you can kind of fall back on, saying there is a need for that, might be beneficial to more initiatives, like supporting what Darcy's doing at city planning. Patty, what you're saying, would that fall potentially under the umbrella of the sustainability committee, perhaps? Is that what you're kind of bringing that up for?
And not really under our umbrella, but if we want to push to get that group, another committee going again, I don't know. I had no involvement with it, because I guess it had sort of dissolved before we started. So Andy would probably be best to speak to that, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think it's probably what Patty said. The people that were driving it are just no longer around and sort of fell off. There's like a League of American Cyclists, I believe is the name of the organization. It might be different order than that
Yep.
hands out like certifications or ratings. And we had gotten like a silver rating, and then we'd worked and gotten a gold rating, and so we were, like those things are, and maybe it was we got to a level of rating where okay, we're gold rated now, and the difference between that and platinum or whatever the next level was so big that we're like, okay, people were just like, there's not much more to be done in that realm. That's a possibility too. Um, just because it was, a lot to do with lanes and local laws regarding giving space and that. And once you have that kind of infrastructure in place and in as a integrated part of your planning, there's not. I don't want to say there's not a lot to be done. There probably could be not. Now I'm just saying it's easy for me to see how okay that's we don't need to focus on that, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll put that on our July homework
Yeah.
list. So. Well, I think that's the highlights right now for us. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it looks like the most of the list. Grants. Patty's on a roll. Thank you. And yeah, make sure folks that you do take a look at, if you didn't at the agenda, there's like a list of dates and stuff of things that have happened, but also things that are upcoming. A couple that volunteers are needed, so if you could just pay attention to that. All right, so before we log off, we do have to ask for public comments. Eric, is there anyone in the public waiting to comment or have offered questions or anything?
Nope, we are all set, Andy.
All right. Thank you much then. Is there anything else from the membership announcements or questions or comments?
I just want to get a shout out to Dee. We had a chance to connect a few weeks back, and I listened to the podcast. She put together a special podcast series for the River Restoration Project that's now available on Spotify. So, and I just had a wonderful time getting to meet her, and I appreciate all of her energy into that series.
Yeah.
So
That was,
special
I
shout
was
out.
gonna say, wasn't sure if this was the right venue, but it was great to be able to connect with Chris and talk about the planning and the remediation of that site. So I'm really glad that that's been published, and you should all check it out if you have a minute.
No. Cool.
Yeah, I will. I did read the people started circulating the Bridge, Michigan article around on Facebook that had done, which was a pretty good article. I had half of the photos that were in the article had people standing next to the Battle Creek River, which has nothing to do with the project. And I was sort of slightly in jest disappointed with Justin Hinckley, who was the author of that article, for not knowing better. It's probably photos weren't his department necessarily, but he spent a long time. He's from Battle Creek and spent a long time at the Inquirer. I'm like, Justin, man, you ought to know. But anyway, nobody else is gonna know. It's not really that big a deal. Didn't really affect the legitimacy of the article that much. All right. Any other comments, questions, announcements?
Oh, one more thing. We do have a new
Yes.
member, Roger Bossy, that wasn't able to be here today, but we've got a new sustainability member. So.
Yep. All right. Yeah, it'd be good to have Roger. I know Roger. I've known him for a while. He'll be a great addition.
Andy
Yes.
and Patty, I did kind of have a suggestion too. We brought this up internally at our BCU board as well. I don't know if there'd be any value to having one meeting, at least in person, maybe be an annual meeting or some degree where we could meet people face to face and have that like synergy happen a little bit, potentially doing an initiative if possible, but even for like a guest speaker, like a lunch and learn, like in person. I don't know. I'd find potentially some value into that. I know the nice thing about this is there's a lot of people on their lunch break and various constraints, but if we plan something forward enough, perhaps It would just be nice to meet some people behind the Zoom screen a little bit. I've been in the committee for almost around 2 years now, so it'd be fun. I know I do get to work with several of these people behind the scenes, but there might be some value to that, and maybe some connect to more engagement to the meetings. I know some of our attendance has been right on the quorum mark, so I don't know if that would help or hinder more, but of course it's voluntary, but it would be nice to maybe have some of that offered. I can offer up our offices if people are looking for venue spaces. We have a nice conference room in the B suite. I'd be happy to host, just throwing that out there.
I like that.
Yeah,
idea.
I don't know, Patty. I don't know if the city has just sort of by rule having uh, committee meetings are Zoom, period. And I don't know.
I can check on that. I know it's been a while ago, we talked about having periodic in person. And there was something, yeah, but I'll check again because I do like that idea. I will see. It changes. The public meetings things change, after COVID. So anyway, I'll check. I like
Yeah.
that.
Or even just like an organized, I know you guys always promote like a special opportunities to be engaged or tree planting or something where we could say the sustainability came out and did this. I think that would be maybe some, I don't want to say brand awareness for what we're doing, but having that tied into our update of the plan and showing that we're not just, meeting quarterly via Zoom for an hour, which is fine, but I'd be fine with adding a little bit more. And maybe that's not everyone's schedule, but just throwing that out there. I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I don't want it to fade like the bicycle group where we meet to meet, and then after a good plan gets worked, then it just falls on DPW's shoulders. It'd be great to have more engagement. Like Robert, I didn't know you worked at the Ralston plant. That's interesting. That's in our
Yeah,
local portfolio. I've met a few individuals that worked there, so.
yeah. Made it is a part of our community for like 120 years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't work there that long though, so just I'm old, but not that.
All right then. Anything else? All right then. Thanks, Patty and Bessie and communications folks. Thank you all, and yeah, well, stay tuned. Patty, you're going to send out potential ideas for other meeting in between meetings or work sessions or whatever we don't call them, but
Yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you much. We will adjourn at 2:38. Thanks all.